Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lauren Dubritz. I am the PR and Events Manager at Jewelers of America. I'm pleased to welcome you to the latest episode of My Next Question, which is hosted by National Jeweler and Jewelers of America. And this is actually the first session in our newly co-branded webinar series. Today's session is hosted by Michelle Graff, Editor-in-Chief of National Jeweler, and features three members of our class of 20 under 40. Christian Bowling, co-owner and jewelry designer of Jeffrey B. Jewelers and Christian Stone Design. Isabel Corbin, staff gemologist and merchandising manager of Panowitz Jewelers. And Jordan Dubin, co-owner of Dubin's Fine Jewelry. Before I turn it over to our host to get the webinar started, I just wanted to let our attendees know that if you have a question, you can type it into the Q&A box in Zoom, and then I'll be back on at the end of the discussion to go through those questions. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be available on both JA's website and National Jewelers website soon. So now I'll turn it over to our host and guests, and I'll be back to field any questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Lauren. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year.
Hello, Happy New Year.
Thank you all so much for joining us. As Lauren mentioned, all three of you are members of Jewelers America's 20 under 40 in jewelry retail class. And we're here today to talk about the past in jewelry retail, the future, 2022, 2023, all the good stuff. So I'm going to start out with actually my own question, which is, how was the holiday season for everyone? And Isabel, I'll start with you. Was it what you expected, better than expected, slightly worse than expected? How was it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think a lot of people kind of were all over the place with that. For us, our year was great, but the holiday season was less than expected and less than normal. Even taking out kind of last year, which was a little bit different because it was, right after 2020. Overall year was great, but the holiday season was definitely less than we were expecting and less than we were hoping for, of course, but still good. I mean, it was still good, but yeah. All
right, Christian, what about you?
I would actually say the same. For the year we did pretty well, but for a holiday season, especially Christmas time, it was definitely slower than the previous years that we've seen by a long shot.
Jordan, same.
And same here. We were going into actually the fourth quarter, we were ahead of 2021, which that year was incredible, like many of us have already said. And then the fourth quarter came in under expected. And but here we are starting fresh January 2023.
2023. Let's leave 2022 behind.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know all the jewelers had a great year. It wasn't a great year for me personally, but that's an aside. I want to talk about, I do want to talk about 2022 for a little bit though, because I want to know what promotions have you run in the past year that have been successful that you can think of?
I'll start. I'll say last year in 2022, we did our first ever piercing event. We are in an upstairs office building setup, so we don't have weekend hours. We're just here on the weekdays, so we ended up doing a Saturday event in the afternoon with light bites, cocktails, things like that. And we had a really nice turnout for our first event. It's something that we're going to build upon and recreate or redo again this year to see if we can mimic that success.
And you did it in your store?
So we did the piercing in store. Clients would come in, they'd pick out our curated selection of a lot of second, third piercing options. But then we did maximize our building space downstairs. We have a nice lobby, and we had some stuff set up down there for people to wait.
Okay, very nice. Isabel, Christian, any great promotions in the last year?
Honestly, we kind of have a couple traditional ones that we're kind of known for. So we haven't really gotten outside of those. We do sponsor a golf hole, and then set up a booth and kind of showcase a little bit of what we do on like the site of the hole, which is, pretty cool. We have the Chauncey Phillips Porter fundraiser that we're always a part of every year, that we, are just known to be there after about maybe 6 or 7 years now. And then we always host at least one event every year around November, getting ready for the holiday seasons, that, we do pretty well with, after years of doing it so much is something that our customers kind of look forward to.
Okay, so you have your events set and they work, so you stick with them.
Exactly. We haven't really gotten out of the norm so far.
Yeah, similar to what Christian was saying, we have, our standard events that we've always done and continue to do well for us. We didn't really do anything new. One thing that we got back into though was being able to serve small food at some of our events, because obviously 2020 and 2021 we held off on that, but that was really, really fun to get back into that kind of feeling
Yeah.
normal in like our traditional events. And we had a lot of people say that, not that the food is like the drawing point, but they were like, oh, this feels so, normal and great. So
But the food is the drawing point, let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, yeah.
Let's be
But
That's what we have a joke here at National Jeweler, that we could be food critics, because that's our biggest comment about any event we go to. We're like, let's talk about the food. Like, who had small sliders we could eat. We want more of that. But so I'm interested, nobody said a permanent jewelry party. I was expecting that to be one of the answers, because I know that's the hot thing.
That's the hot thing. I think it's coming soon, perhaps here. But I see a lot of suppliers out there advertising the permanent jewelry tools.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit now about how do you see selling jewelry continuing to evolve in the next 2 to 3 years? What do you think are the areas you'll be investing in as far as continuing to maintain your client base and also grow sales? Christian, do you want to start?
Well, yeah, for sure. That's definitely something that we've been thinking about a lot, and really taking some time to really study different things that are starting to become available to start getting into. One of them being the VR, the virtual reality worlds,
Yeah.
and I really think that, that's going to be something in the future that's going to be slowly taken off. I've seen a couple companies that were showcasing some different technology that they were offering at the Gym Awards. And, it was just interesting to see, being able to kind of get a feel, being able to see a piece of jewelry inside of a virtual world, and, maybe seeing it on a hand, might not be your hand just quite yet, but, definitely getting into that space, I think, is just going to keep taking off.
And you think the metaverse too, is that something you're interested in looking into?
It is. It definitely is. I actually just got one recently, because I've been hearing a lot about it, and I've been seeing a couple things just really piquing my interest. Like one of them being you're actually able to rent retail space inside of a virtual reality world now, to where you can actually start selling tangible items and having them shipped to customers. So I thought that was, mind blowing, right? So definitely, looking towards getting into that.
Yeah, well, there was a speaker at a conference I went to last year, 2022. I mean, who was talking about how, especially among Gen Zers, for them, their avatar, like their online look, their online presence, that it means as much to them as how they look in real life, like their physical, actual presence, like, and things they can buy for their avatars. And it's really, really interesting. And I think we're going to see a lot more companies, not just retailers, but a lot more companies in luxury in general, getting involved in augmented reality and the metaverse in 2023. That's my opinion anyway. Isabel, where do you want to, what are you thinking about investing in? Where are you looking for growth?
So we have really seen a huge uptick in one-of-a-kinds. And I think part of that is, very typical with how everything in the world is kind of moving to custom and one-of-a-kind pieces. And we kind of saw that across all generations. Everyone was way more interested in a piece if they knew it was one of a kind. And so that's something we want to continue to build on. And I don't think that that's a trend. I think that that's just going to continue to be something that's going to be really popular with a lot of people. And also customization. It's always been there, but I do think that it's going to continue to grow, because we all like something that we can be like, oh yeah, I helped design it, or this is just mine, something like that. But definitely
Right,
one of the times. is so important, and it has a story that goes with it.
Yeah.
Which is, who doesn't like that?
I mean, people want personalized everything now, personalized things for their pets, personalized sneakers. And right, they like to say like, oh, well, this detail on this means this, or I had engraved with this, etc. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely going to continue to be a big area. Jordan, where do you think, how do you see selling jewelry evolving? What areas are you going to invest in?
So I definitely see the AR VR realm coming soon. That's something that I think we're going to be looking at in the near future. Although I do think still for us and a lot of other small single store operations, I think e-commerce is still going to be a growth sector. And so we'll be looking at updating and revamping our website to then perhaps have the capabilities of AR and VR in the future, as well as adding, more budget to the video content generation. Everything now is video, as it has been for a number of years, but just to keep growing the video, the video creation, the video production.
Okay. Yeah, video is becoming big, especially on Instagram. I read
Exactly.
something the other day that was saying like, static posts are dead, like to
Right.
get in the algorithm and to get shared and seen, it's got to be video.
Correct.
And somebody just asked what AR VR is, and that stands for augmented reality, virtual reality.
Correct.
So sorry, that question popped up and it went away, but I hope that answered your question. I also want to bit about something else that's evolved in recent years, and that's clienteling. How has that continued? How's that evolved over the past few years? And what do you think future jewelry customers are going to be looking for when it comes to the customer experience? Thinking about the fact, obviously, that they can buy anything they want from anywhere, basically anymore. Isabel, do you want to start?
Sure. I think as much as it's evolved, it also hasn't in a way. I know that sounds really weird, but the most important thing that we hear a lot from our clients, and for me personally, is staying in contact. Even if it's not great news, you still want to know. If you're having work done on your house and something goes wrong, it's way worse to not know about it and you can't get a hold of anybody than if they just told you, hey, this is what happened, like here's what we're going to do to fix it. So I really think that continued constant communication is so important. And it also builds on, we hear a lot about how people are really looking for authentic and sincere, relationships just across the board. And I think that staying in that contact is authentic and sincere, because, you're telling everybody, hey, this is what it is, and you're just being honest. And I think that's something that it may look different, text versus in person or video or whatever, but that key of great contact and communication, I think is always going to be the most important thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually, are you mostly texting your customers now? And everyone can answer that, but I think that's the way I think all businesses are going, whether it's my hairdresser, my dentist, everything's moving to text, reply yes if you're coming. Is that the way you see your customer communication moving for the most part?
So we have kind of a mix of a lot of different generations in our area, which is great. So we actually still have a mix of phone calls and texts and some email, but mostly phone calls and texts. We do have a lot of clients that really prefer that phone call still. So, I would say a lot of it is text, especially, hey, your order is ready, or, here's some pictures, what do you think? That stuff definitely text, but there's still quite a bit of phone calls happening in our store.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Christian, what about clienteling?
I feel like that we're getting a little bit more intimate, like piggybacking off of what Isabel said, conversation between the customers and keeping a authentic relationship has seemed to be way more valuable in recent years than in the past, when, back when all you really needed was really big names in your store to be able to draw that attention. Now people are kind of gravitating towards people they feel like, they have a connection with, which, is a little bit different than what we've seen in recent years in the jewelry industry. But I feel like, the further down the road we go, is probably just going to keep getting more and more personal, to where, your jeweler is, like one of your best friends. At least that's, my opinion on where we were going with it.
No, I think that's really true. Jordan, what about you?
So agreed on all points here. You know, it's even for the newer generations, for a younger client who doesn't necessarily know what to expect for that level of service at a fine jewelry store. You know, to create that intimate relationship in the beginning, and then to just, you know, culture it moving forward, and, you know, sending, you know, anniversary cards or, you know, birthday presents to a kid or something like that, just staying in touch with them and being thoughtful. I think that goes a very long way, even for the new generation of purchasers.
No, I think you're true. And I think there's something to be said for, I think as more and more interaction, more and more lives move online. Like you all said, I think people are even more so looking for that personal connection. And I mean, especially after COVID, people really realize that they miss that person. And Isabel, you brought that up earlier with the parties, like people realize they really miss that personal connection. I want to move a little bit now to talk about what's going on in store with staffing. And I know staffing's a big issue for all retailers right now. So I want to know, what is your number one secret to finding, like, how do you finding good people? And like both, what are you looking for in good people? And also, how do you physically finding them? Like LinkedIn, what roads are you using? And Jordan, I'm going to start with you on this one.
So we're very small. We have a staff of 3, and we do hire a holiday temp. And so the past several years, we've been very successful working in our network of like friends and family to find someone. And to your question, Michelle, what do we look for? Like trustworthy, obviously number one, considering what we're dealing with. But then after that, things like, you know, creativity, and, you know, a lot of what we're looking for is someone that can model the jewelry we're selling. So we've been very successful there in the past. I'm actually interested to hear what the other two here have to say. So I might be able to get some tips on staffing.
So Jordan, you're saying you just use word of mouth. You just put it out there among your friends and family there in Houston and say, we're looking for somebody part-time these weeks, needs to be able to model. It doesn't sound like a bad job.
No, yeah, it's a lot of perks.
Are you looking for somebody, when you say creative, are you looking for somebody with social media skills in particular?
So more just like creative as far as like showing the jewelry or photographing the jewelry. There is some social media involved, but a lot of that social media content is created through our marketing company. So there's not much of the necessarily writing or designing of the content.
Okay. All right. And you're just 3 there full-time on staff.
Correct. 3 full-time on staff.
Okay. Wow. All right. Christian, what about you? What are you looking for in people, and how are you finding them?
Yeah, I'm honestly right in the same boat with Jordan. We're a pretty small store. We only have 2 staff members outside of Jeffrey and myself. So we haven't really, you know, had to go out and search for clientele. So the ones that we do have now, you know, they actually reached out to us. But I feel like, you know, just going off of, you know, the difference in clientele, passion is probably, you know, would be one of the biggest ones, just because, you know, you are, you know, a salesman, you know, just selling jewelry, but, you know, it's got to be an intimate relationship. You have to, you know, want to be more knowledgeable about the stuff that you're selling, you know. So I would say that, you know, if you could find someone who is really passionate about, you know, the industry and learning a little bit more about it, you know, that would probably take you a long way.
Yeah, that's a good point. And are you looking for somebody that's passionate in general, or do you require them to have a deep jewelry background, or do you look and say, I just like this person, we can teach them jewelry?
Well, I mean, we wouldn't have a problem of figuring out how to teach someone jewelry, you know, because we are such a smaller store, and we have a couple showcases. We have about 6 or 7 different showcases, but we kind of specialize in custom, you know. So with that being the case, I feel like there's a lot of leeway, you know, to be able to, you know, step aside and be able to, you know, add a little bit more education to someone who is just, you know, passionate about really just learning the jewelry industry, you know. So I feel like, you know, definitely being creative, but you know, I feel like passion would probably be, you know, the biggest one that I would be looking for.
Yeah, makes sense. Isabel, what's your staffing situation?
So we're quite a bit bigger, it sounds like, than the other stores, and we we kind of are constantly always looking. I think you kind of have to. We're still, we're still a small business, but you definitely, if you see someone that you think would be good, you want to have that ability to, be like, hey, wait. I will say, I think it's safe to say that the staffing for jewelry is something that's becoming a hot topic. A lot of people are, saying, I'm looking for staff. Where do I find them? All of this stuff. And we're kind of the same way. It's been tricky. It is what it is. I think for me, if I'm looking for someone, curiosity is very important. Jewelry is awesome, but it has a very steep learning curve if you're not familiar with it. And so having somebody that's really curious can be great because they want to learn. And even if they didn't think they were interested in jewelry, if they're naturally curious, they might get that passion that Christian was saying. They might really be like, oh, hey, I love this. So for me, I'm always looking for somebody that's a little curious, ask questions, they want to know. But I do think staffing is so important, and I think it's going to continue to be an important topic moving into this year. We've tried a lot of different kind of avenues to find people. So I don't know that one is any better than the other. I think it just kind of depends.
So you've tried LinkedIn, you've tried all the kind of major.
Yeah, we've tried all of the kind of job board sites. We tried a local temp agency. We've tried even Facebook ad things. So I wish I could say one was knock it out of the park, but I think it just depends. And it depends on your area too, I think is a big one, where you're located.
Yeah, that's probably true too. And what are you looking for exactly? What did you find that works best for your store in terms of people you hire? What traits do they share?
We're kind of, since we have a little bit of a bigger store, we have jewelers on site and everything, as well as having sales team and, all different kinds, kind of depends on what position we're looking for. But I do think that somebody that's wanting to learn is really important. And also somebody that, is passionate about it. And also somebody that is looking to work for a small business, because a small business is very different than
a big company.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's something else to consider too, when interviewing someone is, are they a good fit for a small business? Because it is a whole different ball game, as they say.
No, that's very, very true. It's very true. Let me ask you all this while we're still talking about staffing. How much education and training, even though your staffs are small, are you still doing some level of education and training? And how important is that for your store about whether it's new product or getting refreshed on old product? And we're going to come to another semi-related question in a minute. But Jordan, it's just three of you. I think is it you, your mom, and your dad?
It's me, my father, and our assistant. So education is very important, not just, for the products you currently have or that you're bringing in, but then just to take it all the way back to, Gemstone 101, to always kind of keep learning. You have to push yourself to kind of keep discovering new. And actually, Isabel, to your point, curiosity, you can't teach it, but when you have it and you are doing something like this that you love, then I think it makes all the difference in the world. So a lot of the education will come down to either my father or I, and then we'll kind of always collaborate and talk about things together as we're learning new things.
And are you doing most of that salespeople coming to your store? Are you doing most of that at trade shows or or conferences? Or are you doing most of that virtually now?
All the above. We not as many salespeople coming on site to train, I would say, as decades past, but right. We do still have a number of salespeople that do come through that will help us in that aspect. But then of course, attending shows like JCK, plenty of seminars there for continuing education, and then JA's website, as long as other industry websites, plenty of education to keep you on your toes.
Great. And Christian, same question to you. What education and training, how important, and how are you doing it?
We haven't really been super specific on education, just because we were kind of lucky enough to get people who were kind of already in the industry for a little bit. But moving forward, we definitely do the trade shows like the JCK, and also as far as things that pop up even though they are pretty educated, there might be a couple questions here and there that we try and stay on top of, but we haven't really had too much issue with, coming across things that really had to, take a deep dive into as far as getting, better educated to be able to, have that transparent communication. So, probably moving forward is probably something that we want to start, getting a little bit more of a hold on. But as of right now, I mean, we've been pretty good with the education that's there.
Okay, that's interesting. Isabel, what about at your store?
Education is super important, I think, for the jewelry industry, just because it is so all over the place. There's so many different things to know, and it is constantly evolving. So I do think trying to keep up on it is, one, a monumentous task, but two, very important. There's new trends, there's new designers, there's gemological information coming out every day. So there is a lot. One thing that we have found for our sales team specifically has been super helpful to get them excited is to have those trainings from either the designer, during a trunk show or during a training, or from a rep that is familiar with a designer. That gets them really pumped up about that particular line. And I think that really helps. And then for me, where I'm more I'm a gem geek. So for me, I also love to learn. So I'm always seeking out articles about gems or new books that I haven't read or something, because there's so much to learn, and I don't think anyone in one lifetime could learn everything about gems there is.
Definitely not.
Yeah, but it's fun. It's good. So I think education and training is so important. It also helps your staff feel really comfortable. They feel like they're prepared then to, help clients, or if something comes up, they know what to do. So I do think it's super important. And yeah, having that direct connection with designers has been great for us. It gets them really excited about, what they're showing. So.
And then if they have a story to tell about why the designer made this piece, the inspiration, that just helps the sales process so much.
Oh yeah, their excitement carries through to the client, and then the client's really interested and excited too. So
right.
Yeah,
Exactly. So this is my kind of related question. We're talking about education, training. I want to talk a little bit about probably one of the biggest topics in the industry right now, and that is, of course, lab-grown diamonds. So number one, what is your experience with them in the store? Carry them, not carry them? What do clients ask about them? So let's start there. Christian, lab-grown diamonds at your store, do you carry them? And do people who come in ask about them?
We actually don't carry any, but we do get a lot of inquiries about it.
Interesting.
With as much information that's out there, we've actually had a good amount of clients come in with a lot of information already, just being able to do the research on their own, whether it's a little misleading or maybe it's not all the way accurate, and we're just there to kind of facilitate the information there. But we offer them if they're requested, but it's not something that we carry in the store though.
Okay, but you'll say to them, if you're really interested, I have suppliers that can reach out and find that stone for you.
Absolutely. I mean, from what we've seen, it's, even though the customers that do come in and they are inquiring about them, it's not always the final end all be all sale either, just because they have maybe a little bit misleading information about natural diamonds, or just things that they might have seen on the internet and they want a little bit more clarity. But it depending on whatever the reason or whatever they'd ask for, we wouldn't have a problem providing it for them.
Okay, interesting. And what is the nature? Do they mostly just come in and say, hey, I read about lab-grown diamonds online, can you tell me a little bit more about them? Or do they, most of them, seem like very set about buying one?
Both. We've had people come in and they were just curious about what it was, the difference between a natural and a lab grown. We've had customers come in and say, no, I absolutely don't want a natural, I want 100% a lab grown, and then the reasoning is always the interesting part. So sometimes they would come in and then they would end up changing their mind after we kind of give them a little bit of education on both. But we've had quite a good amount of customers come in with some information on them so far.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you.
Mhm.
Jordan, what about you?
We don't stock them in store. We don't show them or advertise. We do get requests for them, and we honor those requests. So it's a per order basis. I will say we do have some clients coming in, not many, some coming in already with knowledge of lab grown, and they'll request it beforehand. But then occasionally there are times where we've presented it as an alternative, and people had never heard of it. So I think that's going to start changing over the next few years, where you'll see more people know at least something about it. But right now, just still, per order basis on the lab grown.
And Jordan and Christian, those, just quick follow-up, those customers who are ending up buying a lab grown, do you think that's mainly price driven, that they just say, well, I want a diamond this size, and here's the price of a natural and here's the price of a lab grown? Is that mostly what the underlying decision maker is?
I believe so.
Yeah, more times than not, absolutely, yeah.
Isabel, what about in your store, lab grown diamonds?
So same Z's as Jordan and Christian. We don't actually stock them in our store, but we have several suppliers that we do work with if somebody requests. Hilariously, I'm in Washington State, and the West Coast is always a little bit slower to get on with trends, it seems like. We just in the last 2 years have been getting those requests for them. And even then, it's not every client. But we have been finally seeing people request. I remember, in 2019, I think we had literally only one person come in and ask about it, which kind of shocked me. But I think it's just our area. We are now.
I mean, to be fair, it might be partly your area, but I also think the growth in the lab grown diamond industry has really been like some in 2019, a lot in 2020, and a lot in 2021. I think when De Beers came out with Lightbox, that was a big turning point in the end. That was 2018. That was like mid 2018. In my mind, that was a big turning point, and that kind of turned the faucet on. And I think it's been growing. Demand and the number of people making it has been growing ever since then. So I don't think it's just that you're slow on trends. I think it's, I think they're just in the past year or two, I would say and you guys can agree or disagree. I feel like they've just exploded in terms of the number of companies making them and their presence, like to where consumers are seeing them now.
And with that, we've seen already some price, decreases. So
right.
We've actually, with the price decrease, we have actually sold some. I remember the first couple requests we got in were price driven, but then when they saw the price versus the natural, I don't think it was as much of a gap that the client was hoping it would be. And they ended up either going with a natural or going with a completely different stone. We're finally seeing now that the prices have come so far down that honestly, I think that has a lot to do with why our sales are more of the lab grown, but it's still a very small section of our store, and we're kind of still not going to stock them right now just because of that. We get requests, and of course we can get them in, but it has been really interesting to see, and I'm curious to see if it continues to grow with more awareness and people hearing about it more and everything. So
yeah, that's very interesting. So this is a follow-up question to that. How big of an issue then is diamond detection in your business right now?
I think it is definitely a big deal. We definitely don't take in any diamonds without, putting it through a proper testing between one, just making sure it's a diamond, but also, the new machines that come out to be able to test for lab growns, just because, there's, so many people out there, and, sometimes they might not know that their diamond might be a lab, or, having the people who, would bring a lab grown diamond and, try and say that it was a natural diamond, or whatever type of circumstances that you could run into. But yeah, before we pretty much touch any piece that comes across, our desk, we will always double test to make sure it's either natural or lab.
So you say it's a big issue for you right now?
I can't necessarily say issue, just because, once we did start seeing influx of lab grown diamonds, that was just something we kind of jumped on, with kind of the thought that it could be an issue down the line if we didn't, so it's just something that we just, took initiative to start checking for early on.
Okay. Jordan?
So it is a big, a growing issue, I guess. Currently, we do test for diamond and, other, so moissanite, CZ, et cetera, on anything we take in. We don't buy from the public. So because of that, lab grown detection isn't a necessity for us yet. I have tried a few different tools to detect lab grown versus natural, and I haven't been very pleased. Some of the more accurate and reliable ones, I think, are just also very costly still.
Like
So
$30,000 or so. like
exactly.
yeah.
And so
And they're
for a
not
small-
really made for small businesses. I mean, they're
Right,
more made for
right.
like mass testing for manufacturers for large retailers. I know the machines you mean, and you're right, they're great, but it's
But
not really an
as
investment.
technology catches up and prices come down, eventually we will have, a handheld device like we all have now to test diamond versus CZ. We'll have it for lab grown. And then when that time comes, we would invest in that, but we don't buy from the public. So it's not something that we're concerned about right now.
And if you really have a question about something, you could send it to a lab
Exactly.
who has the equipment.
Exactly.
All right, thank you. Isabel, what about diamond detection at your business?
So we do occasionally offer trade-ins from the public towards something from our store. So for that, I think it's very, very important, especially I'm less concerned with larger diamonds. I think those are a little bit easier. One, they might be laser inscribed even that, hey, this is a lab. But even if they're not, they're a little bit easier to see and kind of maybe think, maybe I should send this to a lab. The Melly for me is what I'm most concerned about. You have a ring with 100 1 millimeter ones in there. That's kind of a concern. Sure, it's not as much money, but it is still a problem. I think it's going to continue to become not an issue, but a growing, concern. But I do think that, like Jordan said, with technology catching up, I think that it'll kind of also catch up where we have better tools for detection. And that I think will kind of mitigate it. Right now, we're in kind of a weird holding pattern because they're out there and the tools are there, but maybe not great and just needs a little refinement. I will say we've had a few clients bring in loose diamonds for appraisals for either they want to sell it somewhere else or they want to insure it. And all of those we actually do send to GIA. And we let the client know that if you want to get it done, here's how much it costs. We will send it for you. But, and we don't charge over that. We just cover our fee for the GIA. And that way, then we're sure that it is a diamond and then it can go, I can then appraise it as what it is. And I do think that's kind of important, especially if it's a loose stone that they're wanting to get appraised, because that shit covers you. GIA can handle it. It's just good. And sometimes the clients, might be like, oh, I don't want to do that. But I've actually had most of them be like, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
And if you're going to ship it for me, great. Then I don't have to worry about it. So if you're doing something like appraisals or something like that, I've found that that's really, really helpful on larger loose, if you have a concern. So.
And GIA is becoming more visible to the consumer. I think it was last year or the year before they launched that entire consumer facing campaign. So now when you say, yeah, I'm going to send this stone to GIA, they know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. People are very familiar with it now, which is helpful too. So
yeah, which is. I want to leave some time for questions because we had quite a few questions come in that were submitted beforehand. And we've also had a few pop up here in the chat, but I just want to wrap up this part of the session with one question. What is your outlook then for 2023? We talked about it a little bit at the beginning. 2022 kind of ended on a down note. Christian, what are your thoughts on 2023?
I'm definitely optimistic of it. It's a lot of new things coming out. It's, a lot of things in, the country right now that's making it a little bit interesting. But, I believe that, there's going to be a good influx of customers that's coming in with, inquiries with whether it be lab grown or, custom pieces, with Isabel saying a lot more inquiry about one-off pieces. So, I'm interested in seeing how things are going to start shaping out for, next Christmas season. Is it going to be, even more custom than we've seen before, or is it going to kind of digress back to, showcase things? But, I'm looking forward to it though.
Okay. All right. Isabel, what about you, 2023 outlook?
So 2023 is going to be, I think, an interesting year. There's a lot already that's kind of, it feels very uncertain for a lot of people. And it's the start of the year, which is always a little bit weird. I mean, it is. It feels a little bit weird when you roll over to a new year. I think I'm curious to see what happens in, Q3 and Q4. I think the first 2 quarters might actually be a little bit slower, just as things kind of, people figure stuff out. But I do think that that's the perfect time to really focus on the education and the training and, build that part up, and then you're ready for whatever happens. That's kind of my thoughts on it. And I do
would you say Mother's Day is your first big holiday of the year? Or is Valentine's Day big for you as well?
Valentine's Day is usually a bit bigger than Mother's Day. It's
Interesting.
nowhere near Christmas, obviously, but we do get a little bit busier for that. Very last minute, though, even more than Christmas, like the day of Valentine's Day, So I'll be curious to see how that goes. And I will be curious to see, kind of after the summer what happens. But I definitely think this would be a great year to focus on refining, your staff, refining training, getting all that ready to go for, whatever happens for the next holiday season. So I'm curious to see what happens.
All right. And Jordan, your outlook for 2023.
We are we're closing out 2022, coming in with our final numbers and figures, and we're looking at setting goals for 23 kind of based on that year. Obviously 21 we know was, quite historic for many. Now we're maybe
But also
coming
a
back
bit
down.
probably of an anomaly.
Exactly. And so coming back down to more, normal times again. A lot of uncertainty, I would agree as well, coming ahead in 23. But, all these holidays, all these occasions, your clients are going to still have their birthdays and anniversaries. Like, there are still many reasons to buy jewelry, and we're going to position ourselves to be that choice.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. Like, no matter what's going on, there's always birthday, there's always anniversaries, and perhaps everybody, all the jewelry buying that went on during COVID, to everybody's surprise, hopefully that'll continue. Like, hopefully people have kind of rediscovered fine jewelry as a luxury. Lauren, with that, I'm going to toss it back over to you. I know we had some questions come in. Hi, Lauren.
Hello, I'm back, guys. Thank you guys for that discussion. As a reminder, everybody, if you have any questions, just leave them in the chat on the right-hand side in Zoom. And I'm going to kick it off with a question that was submitted beforehand. So somebody asked, what has been the best way you have found out to engage with Gen Z? Any takers?
So since we do live in an area and our store is in an area where we have multi-generational, our marketing has to be kind of all over the place, just because we do have so many different generations. So I wouldn't say that we've developed like a specific target for Gen Z, but what we're seeing with the clients we have reached that are in that generation is, as much as they really love the accessibility of the technology, and that's often how they'll start shopping, when they come into the store, that first experience is really important as well. They're still looking for that personal connection, especially with, maybe jewelry isn't something that they've really thought about. And now that they're getting to the point where they're buying it, that's really important. And also options, they seem to really like to have options. The custom again is huge, but also just seeing just different stuff in the showcase, there can be like, oh, well, you have that, but this is slightly different too. So we've seen that really be a good selling point for Gen Z.
Jordan or Christian?
I'll say, still there's going to be a need to target that generation through, Facebook, Instagram, etc. But once they are clients continuing with your email campaigns and stuff, they're still checking email. But then, to kind of going back to one of Michelle's questions earlier, cultivating that relationship with Gen Z is important. It's something I think they're not really sure. It's not something you get at really any other store. You don't go in to get your, your widget or at Best Buy or whatever you're buying, and they don't ask for like birth date and anniversary, and they don't send you handwritten cards and things like that. So I think once you start creating that intimate relationship with Gen Z, you could have a client for life.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also attached just to the nature of jewelry. It's a very personal thing in a way your
Exactly.
refrigerator or your clothes or whatever, your television set or not. I'm sorry I interrupted, Christian.
No, you're fine. I would say that, again, we haven't really targeted Gen Z so much. So a lot of the Gen Zers that have come in was because of social media. But I find it interesting how curious they are. Coming in and they're not afraid to ask questions about, different things that they might have heard or seen somewhere on social media. So, I would say, being able to provide that education behind it would probably be something that we'll probably try and figure out how to push a little bit more creatively, whether it be on social media or marketing or whatever event. But education is seeming to be something that's really drawing them into the store.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
I think they're the perfect generation to kind of know that, yeah, they understand how to get all the information online, but they're mature enough in the internet to understand that it's not all going to be the facts. So they want to go to someone that's going to help them separate fact from fiction.
Mhm.
right. Our next question actually ties in directly with this. It's what social media platform have you found to be most successful for your business?
I'll
think
say Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And then of the three, I think there's going to be more growth in TikTok coming over the next, several years. Instagram still is probably the go-to for most, and like for the broadest audience, but growth coming out of TikTok in the coming years.
Yeah, I would say probably we get the most engagement on Instagram. We do have a lot of clients that use Facebook, so we do still use Facebook. And we do occasionally get like actual clients messaging through that as well. But I would say the most engagement is definitely on Instagram. We haven't really done much with TikTok. We don't really have anybody in our store that's super familiar with it, to be honest. So we definitely, if we got into it, would want to do it right. And you kind of have to know what you're doing to make it work for you. So
Yeah, I would agree with Isabel. We've probably seen the most through Instagram, but we definitely have a good amount through Facebook. But it's also funny to see the age gaps between
Yep.
each social media platform too. So, a lot of the Gen Zers are coming in through, Instagram, while, a little bit older generation is coming through Facebook, so it's definitely important to have both. And we have not gotten into TikTok yet. So, I know it's definitely something that, you have to get into, and we just haven't. So definitely something that we want to get into. But yeah, those three platforms are probably the most successful.
Yeah, we've just started. I mean, we're not selling jewelry, we're just national jeweler, but we've started dabbling in TikTok, and we're always talking about it. It's time consuming and it's completely different. And I think that, Christian, that was the most political way to say that it's older people who use Facebook I've ever heard, because it's absolutely true. Like at one point, every young person was on Facebook, and then a lot of younger people left, and you'll find them on Instagram and you'll find them on TikTok. And I feel like a lot of times Facebook is just a much older demographic now.
Yep. All right, the next question is, do you guys offer e-commerce shopping on your website? And if so, which platform works for you guys that you would recommend?
We recently redid our website so that we could do a little more e-commerce and actually have live stock on there. It was a process, and I personally am not super stoked with the company that we're working with, so I can't make a recommendation. It was not an easy process, and there's still a lot of stuff that keeps coming up that's been a recurring issue. I think the website looks really great. And we have had some engagement on people going on there to buy, but most of the time people are using it to look, to pre-sort, and then they'll call us or email or come in and say, hey, I found this on your website, can I see it? Which has been really interesting. I kind of expected it once it was up to be, oh, I'm not going to go in or talk to them, I'm just going to buy it. And we've actually seen the opposite. So I do think it's great to have it available and have live stock on there. I think that's super important for clients to I do that. I'll go and like search online. Do they even have it before I go in,
Yeah.
But as for recommendations, since I'm not happy with the company and the service, I can't recommend, but I do think having a website with actual stock is very, very important and very helpful.
Yeah, I think this is just my opinion, in the consumer's mind, it elevates the status of your business. Like, I think if you're not selling on your website, some consumers might look and be like, oh, well, this doesn't look like I think people are really judging you on your website, and your website has to look as up to date as possible. And I think e-commerce is one of those. It's also worth pointing out that people could look at it on the website, come in and try it on, go home and think about it and say, you know what, I do want that, go home, click that way they don't have to come back in. Just a thought. Christian, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. I would say that the website is probably a battle that we have been, going back and forth with a couple different website developers. So I can't necessarily, offer any either, but we do have e-commerce shop on our website. But again, it's just something that we try and stay on top of, and we're constantly going back and forth with the developers on different ways that it would to make it look a little bit more appealing versus product versus how it's laid out. So it's just a constant battle that we're trying to stay on top of, because I believe you're 100% right. It is more of a status thing, and it does add a little bit more validity to have it. So it is very necessary. It's just just trying to find that company that you can work with well consistently is more of a headache than anything else.
As a small business, yeah.
Yeah.
Lauren, there's a future webinar session idea, how to find a good website developer. It seems
Exactly.
it seems like that's needed.
I definitely would be there.
Jordan, what about you and your website?
And so we have a e-commerce website that we sell on, and it was built on a Wix platform. It was actually built in-house. I did the majority of it. So for someone that either doesn't have a website, I think you can start with something like a Wix. I would also recommend Shopify. There is a lot of drag and drop kind of basic things you can do to create your own. I also know Squarespace, who does credit card processing. They also have a quite robust platform now. But we're probably going to be moving off the Wix platform this year. Shopify is integrated with our point of sale system, which we use the Edge. They have a bi-directional communication that, to Isabel's point, will show what's in stock when it sells. It moves off. I like that moving forward, and so we'll end up doing that sometime this year.
Yeah, actually, we have a regular column, a national jeweler called the Smart Lab, and it's Emmanuel Rahib with Smart Age Solutions. And he wrote a couple weeks ago, his recommended platform is Shopify. His recommended website platform for jewelers is Shopify, for kind of all those reasons. It integrates with POS, it's easy to use, etc. I'm sorry, Lauren, we have more questions, I know.
That's okay. I think we have time for one more question. What jewelry trends have you been seeing in the past few months or expect to see in 2023?
It's a good one.
A lot of color, I would say. I've definitely seen a lot more color than in recent years. And I believe that, maybe designer is starting to pick up a little bit more. For a second it was really strong on the one-off custom, completely different than anyone else's. And I've been seeing a little bit bigger push on, a little bit different designers coming back into the picture, but definitely a lot of color.
Color, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with Christian. Color was huge for us in the last 16 months. We had people not only buying it, but also coming and asking it for it, which was surprising. I don't know that we'd ever had that before. I'm curious to see if that continues or if it was just kind of an isolated situation. One of a kinds, of course, was really big. Designer pieces for the people that have become collectors is really good. And then also interesting shapes, I would say, I think is a trend that's going to continue. You know, ovals and pairs, not just in diamonds, but just in the shape of metal and things. Kind of asymmetrical stuff's been really popular. So more of that unique shapes, kind of interesting, different type things. I think that particular trend will continue through this year.
And Isabel, are you seeing a lot of people wanting pairs and ovals for engagement rings?
Ovals, especially for us, we've seen a little bit more of the pear shape, but ovals is really hot in our area for engagement rings. So tons of people coming in asking for that, wanting that. We've seen that's become very, very popular. Absolutely.
Yeah, in my mind, it's kind of leapfrog the princess cut because I feel like it was always like round and princess. Now it's kind of like round and oval.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely seeing that. I think rounds, then ovals, and then some of the other fancy shapes are all kind of over here for us.
Jordan?
I would say to that point, yes, ovals definitely the number two, most popular shape for an engagement ring. But I think moving into 23 and even beyond, I think men's jewelry and maybe even like what we can call unisex jewelry, I think is going to be a growing space. Actually, when I met Christian in Vegas at the JA meet and greet, he was wearing a amazing diamond tennis necklace. So I think to that point, Christian, you can chime in as well on some men's jewelry, but I think that's going to be a growing sector for the industry.
You know, we see that on the red carpet more and more and more. And I think the more people see it, the more comfortable where they are with it, and the more people are going to run with it. And in fact, it'll be something to watch for anybody that's interested. The Golden Globes are actually tonight. So it'll be interested to see what men come out with jewelry on the red carpet tonight.
Great. All right. That is all for today. I wanted to thank everybody for joining us. Before we wrap, I just wanted to note that all three of our panelists are current members of our class of 20 under 40, and we are actually opening nominations for our next class of 20 under 40 next week. So if you or somebody you know is deserving of the honor, make sure to head to JA's website at jewelers.org next week, and that will be live. My next question will return on Thursday, February 16th at 2 p.m. for a discussion on what to expect in 2023 with Sherry Smith and Paul Dominski. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate you taking out the time today to be with us. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.